Vanguard just issued an important warning that we all need to know about. They released a study that's called Retirement is Changing. Are you prepared? So let's dig in and see what this warning is. So first off, in Vanguard's study, they share with us what's staying the same. And I think that's important. And they surveyed retirees, and some said retirement would be possible. This is how they're thinking about retirement. Retirement would be possible for them when they had enough money or their big financial commitments were all met, when they had had enough of work after 20, 30, 40 years. They're like, enough. It's time for me to focus on me. And the third one was some of the respondents were conflicted. They wanted to work and they wanted the money, but they didn't want to be working when they were too old. So these are some of the constants. I think if we went back 100 years, if we went back 200 years, this is how many people were thinking about the time when they were no longer going to work. But the study goes on to say that people's expectations of retirement have changed dramatically over the last couple decades. And their research surveyed 1,500 people, and they found that many people were expecting their retirement to be gradual instead of a cliff event. One day you're working, the next day you're not, when they would suddenly stop working. And so my question is, yes, people are planning on it being gradual, but how many of us actually get to do this? Well, the Vanguard study gives us some light into this. Their study found that 38% of people who were already retired, 38% of those people were able to retire gradually. And almost two-thirds, 62% of non-retired people were hoping to retire gradually. Now, it doesn't surprise me that two-thirds of people are hoping to retire gradually, but it does surprise me that almost 40%, 38% of the retirees that they surveyed were successfully able to do that. So that gives me hope. I've been a financial advisor for over 20 years. I'd say close to half of my clients were hoping to retire gradually, but in my experience, and I practiced being a financial advisor in the state of Utah, in my situation, I had clients all over the United States, but most were from Utah. In my experience, very few people were actually able to retire gradually. So it gives me hope that Vanguard's nationwide survey showed that 38% of people were able to retire gradually. So let's look into the 62% of people that are not retired that are hoping to retire gradually and see where that 62% comes from. And Vanguard does a nice job in this chart of breaking that out. 27% were intending to reduce their hours at their existing job, which is what I think most of us think about gradual retirement. 21% were thinking about mostly stopping work on a specific date. So, January 1, they're going to retire. And they were planning on mostly stopping work. And then 14% were planning on retiring gradually by taking a different job. So, I think it's a wonderful option. I do, when I talk to people, often the best choice, they're trying to decide between A and B. And in this case, you're trying to decide, should I retire at 60 or should I keep working? Should I retire at 55? Should I keep working? Should you retire at 65 or keep working? And so people are balancing that. And I often tell people when they have a choice between two good alternatives, oftentimes the best answer is not either or, but it's both. And can you do both? And that's what retiring gradually really is. However, we have to be careful because sometimes the choice between two alternatives, the best choice is either A or B. And so thinking through which option is the best, and sometimes making that difficult decision is the best option. And it's not doing both, which is what gradual represents. And it depends on each of us as an individual. It depends on where you're at in your life journey. I can tell you that if you find yourself a little fearful about retiring, you're wondering how you're going to spend your time, you're afraid of being bored, Your purpose is tied into your job after 20, 30, 40 years of doing what you're doing. You know, you've got a lot of knowledge. Your job is probably a heck of a lot easier today than it was 10 years ago. You've probably climbed the ladder and you're making good money, and you're concerned about giving up that good money. And then you also realize that it's probably a one-way door. Once you tell your boss you're retiring, once you go through that door, for most of us, it would be hard to say, you know what, I changed my mind. Now, fortunately, most retirees are happy with that decision. Some are not. I would say of my clients, probably close to 80% were happy with their decision. And there was a study by Mass Mutual that also looked at retiree happiness. And it showed that almost everybody was happy. I think the number was 8% of retirees said that they were unhappy or they were less happy in retirement. So the good news is once we get through that transition, the other side, most people look back and say, gee, I wish I had done this sooner. That's been my experience, because once you're on the other side, once you've done the hard work, then you look back and say, I wish I had more time. I'll give you, for instance, I live in a ski town in Utah, and we have long, hard winters. And I tell my wife that, you know, I liken winter to being in a freezer. And in the fall, I feel like I'm being dragged into that freezer. But once I'm in the freezer, I really enjoy it. Similar to where I'm at now. I just recently retired about 4 months ago as I record this. And even for a financial advisor, even for somebody that's gone through this journey and helped hundreds of people through it, I still have those different phases. I'm still human. I still have those concerns, those worries as well. And I can tell you now that I've made the transition, I'm glad that I didn't go gradually. I had the opportunity, and I'm very grateful to my company and to my boss for giving me the opportunity to kind of what we call glide sloping in, you know, retiring slowly. But while sometimes that can be the best of both worlds, sometimes it can also be the worst of both worlds. You don't have all of the benefits of being retired, you know. You're still responsible for delivering on results, and that can weigh on you, and that can steal some of the joy of retirement, and it can steal some of the most important aspects of retirement, which is an opportunity to return to our health. It's super important, because at 60 years old, most of us are going to have less than 1,000 weeks of healthy, active time in front of us. So the ability to return to our health, the ability to focus on our health is super important. And if we choose to do both, if we choose to do that glide path, if we choose to do the gradual movement, which Vanguard is warning, that's a movement that's growing, and you can take that as a heralding of a good movement, a good thing, a new movement has taken hold, a positive movement. Or you can view it as a warning call. And I don't get to make that decision which one this is. I would just caution you that most people that I know are happy once they've made that transition to retirement. And maybe, as opposed to gradually retiring, maybe if you're not quite ready to retire yet, you keep working, but you focus on enjoying that journey until you retire. And that's why I made this video up here. 8 things to stop doing in your 50s and 60s in order to enjoy your journey until you retire. I'll see you in there.